15 vast vessels charged at their foes with no degree of caution, hesitation or tactics, just a bloodthirsty charge of hulking vessels of iron, plasma and death. The machine spirits of these starships motivated with the same foul hunger for blood and skulls as the crews piloting them. 15 vessels of the 12th Legion, many once loyal noble vessels for the Imperium, now just blood-hungry beasts of the 12th Legion's madness. Opposing them at the edge of an asteroid field, 5 loyal vessels of the Adeptus Astartes squared off against them. Black armoured hulls, lightning bolt sword emblems adorning their plates. 3 escorts, 2 strike cruisers, and leading the flotilla, a vast battle barge, heavily armoured and armed even by the standards of Adeptus Astartes warships, the Serenity's Wrath, flagship of the Storm Knights chapter. Upon the bridge, Chapter Master Hyperion smiled at the completion of a long hunt. The butchers of Telenor had been vastly spread, and it took decades to hunt them all down, until this fleet was the last fleet left. With the influx of Primaris Marines, they had been able to begin the attack against the 12th Legion, but the rebuilding of Telenor, the Indomitus Crusade, and the new Dark Imperium and its horrors had taken time away from vengeance against the World Eaters. Internally, Hyperion had thought that vengeance was a fool's game, but honour and the souls of the dead howling at him each night to hunt and kill the 12th Legion bastards to the end of the galaxy finally swayed him on the path of vengeance. One advantage of the hunt was that many of the chapter's relics had been recovered and much honour had been restored to the Storm Knights, but still so much of it was lost or too tainted to be ever returned to the chapter. Hyperion's thoughts returned to the present. Gunnery officer, report time before weapons range. 60 seconds before maximum weapons range, Lord. Good. At maximum weapons range, fire the bombardment guns at the lead vessel before priming the lancers. At 6,000 kilometers, fire all the lancers and all firepower we have at the Typhoon Master. Chapter Master, that ship used to be one of, started First Captain Lux. The 12th Legion have corrupted it. There is no recovering our lost ship. Better to destroy it ourselves and let it die with honour. Agreed, brother. Its soul is damned, voiced High Interrogator Kafuri. Yes, Chapter Master. At 6,000 kilometers the lancers fired, ripping off the voids of the Typhoon Master. Bombardment guns ripped into its prow, rupturing its shield before the lancers burned into the prow plates of the hull. Finally, the former Storm Knight's ship was destroyed by a full volley of torpedoes from all 5 of the Storm Knight's vessels, ripping it apart into molten shrapnel in the void. The death of its comrade, the remaining World Eaters' ships were enraged and charged faster, their engines burning hot to reach the Storm Knight's fleet. The World Eaters started firing, bombardment guns, macro cannons and lance fire erratic but heavy. The Storm Knights turned about and burned their engines, burning plasma for 3,000 kilometers, before quickly turning about and firing another volley of fire, before quickly turning around again. They repeated this process of hit-and-run attacks 2 more times. 2 of the Storm Knights' escort ships were hit by lucky shots and destroyed, but they had taken 1 12th Legion light cruiser and 2 of the World Eaters' escorts for their losses. Then, on the edge of the asteroid field, the Storm Knights stopped running. They turned and started launching Storm Ravens, and macro cannons roared out against the oncoming fleet. On paper, it seemed foolish for the Storm Knights to stand their ground. The duel was easily one-sided, the Storm Knights outnumbered, and their hit-and-run tactics seemed effective. But Hyperion was not a fool. In his marble throne on the bridge of the Serenity's Wrath, he smiled. This attack was long planned. While the 12th Legion were bloodthirsty killers and always eager for a fight, the lord they were up against was not a fool. Any Chaos leader who could sack an Adeptus Astartes homeworld was worthy of taking seriously. So Hyperion had planned, prepared, and finally he goaded the 12th Legion into this attack. He assumed that the 12th Legion would be so eager to charge, so eager for blood and skulls, they wouldn't even bother scanning the asteroid field behind the Storm Knights. So, the World Eaters were lured into a trap. As the World Eaters reached 5,000 kilometers and started fanning out to encircle the Storm Knights, 20 vessels burst out from the cover of the asteroid field and charged towards the World Eaters' fleet. So a duel that was once 11 ships to 4 suddenly became 24 versus 11. Over their many thousands of years of service to the Imperium, the Storm Knights had made a number of friends and acquired many oaths and favours from their fellow Adeptus Astartes comrades. So Hyperion, in preparation for this attack, had cashed them all in. Every last favour and oath, every scrap he could muster. Some had vetoed against the cashing in of the chapter's legacy on this plan, but Hyperion knew that they would need every advantage possible to achieve their goal. Many of their cousin chapters were unable to attend. Hyperion understood. It was dark days for them all. But despite that, 3 chapters of the Adeptus Astartes had answered the Storm Knight's call for aid. The Angels of Fire, their most recent friendship forged in the blood of orcs during the Third War of Armageddon. The Angels in Carmine, an ancient oath, but warriors who were always up for a fight, and answered the call without question. And the Revilers, who alongside the Iron Knights and Storm Knights, the 3 chapters had formed a lifelong bond and kinship with each other with the blood of cursed founding renegades and traitor guardsmen. Hyperion smiled at the thoughts of old brotherhood united and the ancient sagas told between them. Hyperion opened a link to his chapter cousins. Brothers, it is time. Strike hard and strike fast. And I, on behalf of the Storm Knights, my Primarch and my honour, I thank you all for your aid this day. Castellan Jericho of the Angels in Carmine responded first. His holograph image appeared on the bridge of the Serenity's Wrath. No, cousin, you do us a great honour. We cannot wait to sink our blades into the bodies of traitorous filth. Captain Emerus of the Angels of Fire responded next. It is always good to fight alongside honour brothers in glorious battle. Honorius of the Revilers responded last. We are glad to sink our blades into the backs of traitors, cousin, although I am truly surprised that the Iron Knights chose not to join us in this endeavour. Hyperion lingered before he answered. The Iron Knights of Dawn have their own battles to fight. Hyperion had asked the Iron Knights for their aid, but the Sons of Dawn could not spare any warriors, desperately holding back the tides of the traitor legions emerging from the new rip in the galaxy. So instead, Hyperion had asked the Iron Knights for a different favour instead. The fortress monastery of the Storm Knights had been razed during the scouring of Telenor, so Hyperion had requested that their brothers of the Iron Knights design the Storm Knights a new fortress to call home, as repayment for their ancient oaths. Hyperion knew that any fortress built by the Sons of Dawn would not fall as easily as the fortress of Telenor had done, and the Iron Knights were more than willing to design a grand fortress for them. Amarest spoke again, rousing Hyperion back from his thoughts. Plan of attack? Free range, cousin. Board, kill and destroy all the vessels except for the flagship. Very well. Good hunting, my brothers. All of the Astartes hologlyph images disappeared from the bridge of the Serenity's Wrath, and Hyperion turned back to the crew. Gunnery officer, target the flagship. Confirmed. The guns of the Loyalists opened up. The traitors fought like cornered beasts. Lances, torpedoes, Ursa's claws, bombardment guns all hurled out against the Loyalists, while the Loyalists picked apart the foe. Red, orange, black, and grey vessels duelled the blood-red ships of the damned 12th Legion. A vessel of the 12th Legion exploded under a volley of torpedoes from the Inexcelsius, the vast battle barge of the Angels in Carmine, while nearby the Angels of Fire mob boarded a traitor cruiser with boarding torpedoes and thunderhawks. Hyperion smiled at his comrade's work before raising himself up off his throne. Flag Captain Luisha, you have command. Yes, Chapter Master. Hyperion and all of the Astartes on the bridge left the chamber for the hangar bay. On board the ships of the Storm Knights, 4 companies of warriors armed themselves and prepared for battle. Oaths of moment were declared and swords drawn. Hyperion walked into the landing bay to the greetings of his brothers. High Interrogator Kafuri and Chief Librarian Omegus saluted the Chapter Master as he boarded a Thunderhawk with his 11 Nightwing bodyguards waiting for him on board. The Nightwing were an old order of the chapter, 11 bodyguards of the Chapter Master who existed outside the chapter's hierarchy, armed with swords and shields and all hand-picked from warriors amongst the chapter. Not that the order had helped his predecessor, thought Hyperion darkly. A vox chime roused his thoughts, a priority hail from Captain Dorax of the 8th Company on board the Hail of Lightning. Chapter Master, the enemy flagship has harpooned us and are launching boarding torpedoes. Hold the line, Dorax. Stay strong. I shall send 4th Company to aid you. No, Chapter Master. We can hold here. Stick to the plan. Cut the throat of the traitors. For the Emperor and the Lion, brother. Courage and duty, Chapter Master. Back on board the Serenity's raft, the Storm Knights hurriedly boarded their gunships and awaited the kill order. Hyperion opused a vox link to his brothers. Strike! The assembled gunships took off into the void as boarding torpedoes hurtled out from the Serenity's raft towards the traitor flagship. The gunships flew into a world of fire, ships exchanging lance and cannon fire, gunships dueling with fighters as ships were ripped apart by torpedoes and macro cannons. Looking out through the gunship scanners, Hyperion could see the harpoons in the Shield of Pride as Storm Knight gunships desperately attempted to destroy the massive chains connecting the 2 vessels together. Hyperion hefted his boarding shield and clenched the fingers of his power fist and focused himself for battle. Outside the gunship, the shields of the traitor battleship ruptured just as the gunships burst forth, slamming down into the hangar bay. The hangar bay was lightly defended, the heavy bolters and las cannons of the Thunderhawks blasting apart the tech thralls and servitors littering the hangar bay. 100 Storm Knights of the 1st Company, the Librarius, as well as Hyperion and his Nightwing, slammed down into the landing bay and hurriedly took up positions defending all the access ways, gunning down any dregs that they could find still living after the bombardment of the Thunderhawks. While the second wave of gunships landed Reaver and Infiltrator squads, who, alongside the warriors of the boarding torpedoes, dispersed into the bowels of the traitor vessel. Hyperion had organized this attack, not to destroy the vessel, but to take it intact. Not that Hyperion wanted the ship much, even being on it was disgusting, but recovering the vast amount of weapons and relics of the chapter that were taken by the warriors of this vessel was worth such a risk. So, Hyperion had ordered his Reavers to hijack the ship's defense systems, open airlocks, do everything they could to empty the vessel of people and crew, aside from overloading the reactors themselves and destroying the ship. Meanwhile, at the hangar bay, the Storm Knights dug in and awaited the 12th Legion response. A final gunship landed in the hangar bay, and the hulking form of the dreadnought Novaris stepped out and took up positions beside the Chapter Master. Chapter Master, my brother, I promised you all those years ago that we would have vengeance. I seem to recall asking you to leave me to my dishonor and to the calls of battle, Chapter Master. You did, but I chose to ignore you. I am no hero, Chapter Master, simply for being the only one to survive. Just as I am no hero for being the only officer left after our home fell. So, we are heroes in the eyes of our brothers simply for existing. Symbols have power, brother. Our Primarch knew that well, as do we. The dreadnought Novaris did not speak and instead turned towards the main hangar access corridor. They will be coming, Chapter Master. Just as planned, brother. Better to let them run into our guns than brawl and duel in the corridors against a horde of bloodthirsty killers. Let us hope this works better than it did last time. The guns opened up seconds later. Intercessors and Hellblasters rained down fire on the corridors as the first waves of World Eaters and Cultists charged into the main corridors towards the hangar bay. "It is now time, brother." Navarre stepped out to his place in front of the main corridor as Hyperion hefted his boarding shield and the Nightwing took up positions around them. "For the Emperor and the Lion, brothers! For the Emperor and the Lion!" roared his brothers in answers. The 12th Legion dregs and cultists were soon replaced by full squads of legionaries, chain axes revving and bolters blazing. The corridors leading up to the hangar soon became clogged with corpses and the floor slick with blood and gore. Some of the World Eaters used the wall of their dead comrades as cover, returning fire against the Storm Knights, while others clambered over their dead comrades to get at the Storm Knights. These warriors were shot down by hails of bolt, lass, and plasma. Shots were exchanged on both sides. Storm Knights fell, but more and more of the 12th Legion warriors walked into the guns of the Storm Knights. Hyperion watched over the tactical display of his helm. The overall battle situation was good. Reaver squads had made the secondary bridge and were attempting to override the internal defense systems of the ship. Automated defense turrets were being turned upon their crew and bulkheads were being sealed and overrides reacted. In the void, the Shield of Pride had been freed from its talons but was leaking air and plasma as it limped from the battle. Meanwhile, the Angels and Carmine were in the process of boarding a 12th Legion destroyer, and a torpedo volley from the Revilers ripped apart a retreating 12th Legion frigate. Hyperion's thoughts were returned to the present by a deafening howl breaking through the corridors of the ship. Looking up, Hyperion saw the barricade of the 12th Legion corpses blown apart as a hulking, monstrous beast smashed through into the main hangar. 5 intercessors were destroyed by a single swipe of his axe. A Librarius was cut in half with the backswing. In his wake, 12th Legion warriors came behind him, pouring out into the gap the monster had opened up in the Storm Knight's defense. Hyperion ordered the Nightwing into the attack, and his remaining brothers to plug up the corridor for any 12th Legion warriors. Hyperion sized up the hulking beast in their midst. A ginormous creature, greater in size than even a Primaris Marine, armoured in mismatched ill-fitting plates of red armour, the tendrils of the butcher's nails emerging from its skull. A beast, half of the flesh and half of the warp. It was only as he gazed closer that Hyperion truly knew that this was the Butcher of Telenor. Multiple skulls and Storm Knight helmets dangled from chains across its body, and worst of all, 3 helmets were stabbed on a spike upon its back. The skull helm of former High Interrogator, Chief Apothecary Ahrimael, and finally, the battered relic helmet of Chapter Master Valorius. And in the monster's left hand was the Chapter Master's own blade, the Lance of Telenor, the ancient relic sword of the Chapter. Hyperion reacted slower than Novaris. The Dreadnought's plasma cannon opened up, blasting the creature with globs of molten plasma as the creature was engulfed in plasmic fire. The creature roared in pain and anger as the Dreadnought charged forward and slammed its fist into the creature's chest. A blow that would crush a Space Marine to paste only dented the creature's armor and enraged it further. The Dreadnought swung its axe and carved a gouge into the Dreadnought's sarcophagus. Navarus fired again with his plasma cannon and smashed out with his power fist. The other Storm Knights were too busy being engaged with the World Eaters to aid, but the parked gunships opened up with heavy bolter and lass cannon shots, smashing into its warp-fused flesh. Hyperion shook his head. He broke the spell of the confusion and his instincts kicked in. He charged out at the beast. A full-strength power fist punch only barely dented the knee plate of the beast. But the beast didn't even notice, so Hyperion kept targeting the knee joint. 4 more heavy blows before the creature noticed his attack. The creature swung out with the flat of its axe. Hyperion raised his shield just in time, but the blow still knocked him back to the ground. Seeing their chapter master in peril, two of the Nightwing put themselves in front of the chapter master and then charged the beast. The creature was still focused on Novaris, but it flicked out of the lance of Telenor. The relic blade cut down one of the blade guard, while the other barely blocked it with his shield, the sword cutting a gouge from its plate. Hyperion lifted himself up and looked around. His brothers were still holding the approaches of the hangar, but the monster inside had a chance to break the defense if it was not slain quickly. He quickly checked his helm display and looked at the void situation. It was clearly an Imperial victory. His honoured brother chapters were mopping up the last of the traitor ships, and it was only this ship left that needed to be purged. Hyperion lifted himself up and gathered all of the crack grenades off his belt, placing them into the palm hand of his power fist, and charged back into combat. Hyperion watched as the second blade guard was cut down with a slice from the giant axe. Hyperion primed the grenades as he reached the creature and thrust the grenades into a gap between the monster's armoured plates below its knee. Hyperion raised his shield as the grenades exploded. The blast ripped into the creature's knee, knocking it off balance. Novaris smashed into it with a piledriver blow. The creature roared and smashed out with its axe, a blow severing the dreadnought's arm as Novaris howled a machine howl. Hyperion charged in to save the dreadnought, again targeting the creature's weakened knee. Hyperion didn't have a chance to attack as the creature smashed out with his fist. Hyperion took the hits with his shield, the shield plates becoming dented and cracking with each blow. The creature's second strike was with the lance of Telenor. Hyperion caught the blade with his power fist just inches away from his throat, his shield arm bucking under the hammer blows of the monster's fists while he struggled to resist the sword blade inching closer and closer to his throat. Hyperion didn't want to break such an important relic of the chapter. He just could not in his heart. But if he didn't do something, then he would be slain upon the sword of his own office. The sword tip was less than an inch away from his throat, the power field of the sword scorching his armor. Then a metallic voice roared out, "All swords can be remade, all things rebuilt. Do not let pride damn us all again." Hyperion gritted his teeth inside his helm and clenched his fist, snapping the lance of Telenor in two. He then ducked down and lashed out with a full-strength punch at the weakened knee. The knee snapped, and the beast howled and roared as it dropped down to the ground. "Get down!" the metallic voice of Novaris roared. Hyperion ducked down as an overcharged blast of plasma slammed into the monster's head. 3 more blasts soon followed until Novaris' plasma cannon was overheating and venting out coolant. The creature's head and upper body was reduced to a molten slag from the blast. The mutated World Eater Lord thudded to the ground dead, a pile of goo and blood. Hyperion looked up to see the wounded Novaris thudding towards Hyperion. The two stood in silence as the battle raged on around them. Neither spoke as Hyperion reached down and picked up the broken piece of the lance of Telenor. "Should all things be rebuilt that were broken, brother? Only the things that matter to the future, a future that, even if we do not choose for ourselves, is still ours. So, the ghosts of Telenor scream no more. No, brother, I still scream, and I know I will until the end of all things. So I guess the chapter will have to live with the screams of 2 last ghosts in its ranks. For the Emperor and the Lion. For the Emperor and the Lion, brother." Both Chapter Master and Dreadnought raised their weapons and charged back into the battle.